Jenni Carlson.
I'm Barry Tramel.
Welcome to the Jenni and Berry Show. We have got so much OU football to talk about today. Epic win over Texas. Heisman Trophy race, which now has to include Dillon Gabriel. The Sooners' chances of making the college football playoff. But before we get to that, we want to say thanks to these sponsors for supporting the Jenni and Berry Show. MidFirst Bank, Laser Light Skin Clinic, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, the Oklahoma Ford Dealers Association. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. All right, let's get to this past Saturday in the Cotton Bowl, Barry. We said not just for weeks, but for months that we really wouldn't know how good this OU team was until the Texas game. So after a 34-30 win, how good are the Sooners?
Really, really good. I mean, you can't say there's no test until Texas and then dismiss it after they pass the test. Sooners passed that test with flying colors. It's not a dominating victory, but you'll take any win you get at the Red River. Wonderful, wonderful defensive performance, clutch offensive performance, just a gutty win. Texas is really good, and the Sooners stood with them and won it at the end. What a spectacle. What a jump start to this second season of Brent Venables. The Sooners are in great position going forward.
I agree. And, the defense, I agree that they had a really tough, gritty performance. But this defense still gave up over 500 yards of offense. I didn't realize that until well after the game. It didn't feel like it because they had that goal line stand and so many other things we'll talk about here in a minute. But obviously, when you face a difficult game like they faced against a really good opponent, an opponent that went to Alabama and won, beat a ranked Kansas team the week before pretty badly, I think you have to say, like you said, Barry, this is a good Oklahoma team. How good? We can discuss that, but I do think it's a team that now, Barry, has the door wide open to return to the Metroplex for the Big 12 title game. That seems pretty obvious with the schedule that these guys have, but what about that college football playoff? How does that path look to you?
Well, I mean, I think beating the Horns puts you in position. Now, Sooners are going to lose most tiebreakers. If they go 12-1, they're going to lose most tiebreakers with other 12-1 teams because of the schedule. The Big 12's down. The OU's non-conference schedule very weak. Sooners aren't going to get a lot of tiebreakers there. But at 12-1, you take your chances. So and go 13-0, and there's no questions asked. You're in. So I think where the Sooners are is a fabulous place. We didn't think this was a playoff contender. Now it is. You just go forward and take your chances and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think, they may need some help. They may need teams that would be ahead of them as far as strength of schedule and quality wins and all those sorts of things to lose. But we've sort of seen that kind of chaos in college football in the last couple of years. Teams that, we thought might run the table ultimately don't. So I think it's possible that Oklahoma could lose a game and still be in that conversation. Obviously, their brand is a huge benefit to getting in even with a loss. But I think if they're in that conversation back at the Big 12 title game, they would hope that Texas is there. They would hope that they get another chance to beat the Longhorns in the Big 12 title game. That would help their resume if they could score another win against Texas for the college football playoff conversation. So I know that sometimes people say one time's enough, but that in this situation with the rest of the Big 12 looking like it is, another game against the Horns would do the best for Oklahoma's chances to get into that college football playoff. We talk about this.
Hey, listen, that's a great point. Think of it this way. Same is true of Texas. I mean, the Horns need to meet the Sooners again. So yeah. OU join the Bevo fan club. Texas join the Schooner bandwagon. So everybody get together and let's have some brotherhood going into Arlington.
I'm pretty sure Brett Yormark is not a fan of that situation, Barry.
No. Not a card-carrying member of either club.
No. Maybe Greg Sankey could make the trip across the Metroplex again and be there like he was on Saturday, the SEC commissioner. We'll have to see. How that plays out. As OU returns to national conversation, they're led there, Barry, by Dillon Gabriel, OU quarterback. Clutch on Saturday. He's been really improved this season. And now there was talk before about him being a potential Heisman candidate, but now it feels legit, Barry. But how serious do you feel like his chances are as a Heisman Trophy candidate?
Well, he's at least in the running, and that's where you need to be. He's got all kinds of obstacles in his way, mainly his predecessor as the Sooner QB. Caleb Williams is doing nothing to lose the award. He put the Trojans on his back as USC beat Arizona in triple overtime the other night, or maybe it was 32 overtimes. It was in the middle of the night when I finished watching it. But I think it's Caleb Williams' trophy to lose. But if he does lose it, there you go with Gabriel's at least in the running. So that's a nice jump from a guy who a lot of OU fans were thinking he'll lose his job by midseason to Jackson Arnold. But he's turned into a winning quarterback, a great leader, and a clutch quarterback. What he did Saturday, bringing the Sooners back in that last 117, that's the stuff of legend. He's going to live forever in OU lore for what he did Saturday in the Cotton Bowl. So you do that, and you're at least in the running in the Heisman talk.
Yeah, and Barry, it's interesting you bring up Jackson Arnold. I was thinking a little bit about him on Saturday, if for no other reason than 2 years ago, we saw the switch of Spencer Rattler to Caleb Williams in that very game. We saw the epic comeback that Caleb Williams manufactured there in the Cotton Bowl. And it struck me that, we saw Jackson Arnold early in the season in that sort of specialty running package. You even wrote about that extensively after the opener, Barry, that this might be something that even deserves a nickname. We may see it enough that it's going to become a staple for the Sooners. And instead, Dillon Gabriel's the runner, Barry. He's the guy that's getting into the end zone. I mean, stuff that we never thought was going to happen with Dillon Gabriel, he's doing this year, which to me is remarkable.
Listen, you know what's sort of the untold story of Dillon Gabriel? It's just how tough the guy is. I mean, you mentioned it. I can't remember which game it was. It would have been the one before Cincinnati. It doesn't matter. You wrote about some of his running. But when you think of Dillon Gabriel, you think of shifting and scrambling. I mean, but at Iowa State, we saw him take on a guy lowering his shoulder at the goal line and getting into the goal line. And then Saturday against Texas, we saw him tuck it up and go into the belly of the beast and get some things done. And then he makes some nice runs in open field. The guy is one of his teammates said this, and the guy's just a baller. And what he did leading that team throughout the day, but particularly in the last few minutes, and standing tough in the pocket a couple of times on that last drive. When the Sooners got a hand on Quinn Ewers, down he went. Texas had some sack chances at Dillon Gabriel, and he didn't go down. He got away. So that was one of the stories of the game, is how Dillon Gabriel outplayed Quinn Ewers, particularly just in his ability to not succumb to the Texas pressure.
Yeah, it seems like Quinn Ewers could have maybe been the spoiler to the Pac-12 Heisman parade. It looks like a bunch of those Pac-12 quarterbacks are likely to be in that conversation. Now, I think if there's a spoiler to that parade, it very well may be Dillon Gabriel, because he may get some big numbers coming up with the opponents that Oklahoma has left on the schedule. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we've talked about a lot of forward-looking things. Let's stop a minute, pause a minute, and talk about Saturday for a second. Before we even get to what we saw on the field, Barry, let's talk about what you and I experienced. We had all kinds of interesting experiences with OU Texas, some traditional, some new. What stood out to you about your OU Texas week experience?
Well, the great thing about OU Texas and Red River is this. It's tradition. It's not just the game. It's all the rituals that people of multiple generations have been doing forever. One thing that's become a ritual for me, or an annual rite, is a variety of speaking engagements. On Friday, I spoke at the OU Club of Fort Worth luncheon. Been doing that about 15 years, something like that. And this year, they always have an OU dignitary who also speaks. This year, it was Joe Castiglione. And Joe contacted me a couple of months ago, said, hey, we're both on the program. Let's do it together. He said, let's interview each other. So we got together for lunch a few weeks ago, and we mapped out a strategy. And so that was really cool. I asked Joe about his career and what made him stay at OU so long, and how tough it was to on a personal level to leave the Big 12, a league he helped form as the Missouri athletic director. And he asked me about my career and how I got into writing and my favorite stories. And I thought it went really well. And a salute to Joe C., who's one of the good guys in the business, really understands the media and attempts to work with us. He can't always tell us that OU's going to the SEC. He can't always tell us, hey, Lincoln Riley's been flirting around. There's things he can't tell us.
He could tell us, Barry. He just doesn't tell us.
Yeah, it wouldn't be wise. I could not in good faith recommend it. But no, he's great to work with, and that was embodied by that podium in Fort Worth. We were on the 40th floor of a Fort Worth skyscraper at the Fort Worth Petroleum Club, and it was a cool setting for me, for Joe to include me in that. So I appreciate it. We had a great time. The cool thing about it, or one of the cool things was, as soon as it was over about 1:10, at 1 o'clock in downtown Fort Worth, about 2 blocks from where I was, the Heartland Flyer pulled into the train station in Fort Worth. It included 2 more dignitaries. One, Jenni Carlson, and her daughter, Millie. You guys made the train ride from Oklahoma City to Fort Worth on OU Texas Friday. What was that like? Tell me about the experience of riding the train to Red River.
It was a new one for me. I've been saying for years I thought that would be fun to do and just never had a chance to do it. Usually we all sort of go down in mass with coworkers and that whole thing. And it was really fun because I didn't have to worry about traffic, which usually is, dicey getting into Dallas-Fort Worth on a good day. But with all the extra OU Texas traffic, it only adds to the mess. So I didn't have to deal with that. We rode the train. And it was a really smooth experience. We had a great time. Lots of OU fans. I even saw a Texas fan or two on the train, which I thought was interesting, coming from Oklahoma City, Norman, people getting on there. A couple of people in their burnt orange. I thought that was interesting. Truthfully, the one thing that I was a little surprised by, it was a pretty subdued scene. I thought it might be more robust, rowdy, people sort of showing their Soonerness. And I heard one Boomer Sooner that came actually before we left the station in Oklahoma City. And that was really kind of it. Not a lot of cheering, not a lot of excitement, but I don't know how you felt, Barry, but I felt like people were excited about the possibilities of this game on both sides. Texas obviously came in feeling good. Oklahoma thought, well, this is a testing ground. So I felt like people were really excited across the board about what this game could be. But I don't know that we could have anticipated the classic nature of the game that we saw. I don't think it's the best OU Texas ever. Where do you come down on what we saw on Saturday on the field in that game?
Well, I thought it was a classic. I thought it was unbelievable. I thought it was memorable. I thought it was dramatic. I thought it was historic. And I thought it was only the 3rd best OU Texas game of the 2020s. That's what I thought. I mean, we had a 4 overtime game just 3 years ago. We had an epic comeback with Caleb Williams and all kinds of dramatic, a walk-off touchdown. That happened in 21. This one was great, but for crying out loud, this series is setting such a high standard for quality of games that it's become the best show in college football.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we talk about a lot of other games, the Iron Bowl, the whatever might be coming around, Michigan, Ohio State, all kinds of things. But there was a time when OU Texas sort of got sideways, and it wasn't very dramatic. And those days are gone. We've had a run outside of last year's unfortunate event when Dillon Gabriel was gone and his presence was quite noticeable. But we've gone back 10 to 12 years where it's high drama every Red River, including some of the best drama we've ever seen on the college gridiron. So, yeah. And that one Saturday was just a fabulous game, back and forth. The winning probability, ESPN does that win probability at any point in the game. Texas has a 52% chance of winning. OU has an 84% chance of winning. I mean, that thing just swung wildly throughout the day. So it was an unbelievable spectacle, just great football, and came down to that south end zone right in front of the Sooner fans. And when Nick Anderson caught that winning touchdown, it looked like there were 10,000 OU fans within 6 feet of him. It was just an unbelievable spectacle.
Yeah, the stands seemed to come alive in that moment. Like it was a crazy scene to look and have him score right in front of all those people, because just the jubilation from the floor of the Cotton Bowl all the way to the top, it was constant motion, people just cheering and going crazy. It was the same end zone that Kennedy Brooks ran into 2 years ago to score that big win against Texas. So yeah, you're right, Barry. I mean, it was great theater, great drama. OU gets the ball back with 1:17. That time on the clock seared into Dillon Gabriel's memory. He mentioned that in post game, with no timeouts. They've got no timeouts, and yet they figure out a way to not only get down within field goal range. I mean, you see them get into the red zone, and you think, well, at least they're going to tie the game. But a pass interference on Texas puts them inside the 10. 2 plays later, they're in the end zone with 15 seconds left. They actually gave Texas a chance to throw a Hail Mary that they had to bat down, for crying out loud. So Brent Venables said after the game that was the best game he's ever been involved with. I don't think it's the best OU Texas game, like you said, not even of the last, since we turned to the 2020s, but it was a heck of a ball game. And I think that there's a lot to like if you're a Sooner, if you're a player, coach, fan, whatever the case is. But Barry, I got to ask you, in all the jubilation and excitement about that game, is there anything lurking under the surface that's concerning to you? Anything that stands out as, okay, that was a good game, that was a great win, but what about this?
Oh, the tailback run game still can't get out of its way. Defense, the secondary is still letting receivers. I shouldn't say the secondary. The defense is still letting receivers run free. We saw Iowa State hit the Sooners with a couple of big plays. Texas schemed the Sooners into some problems. A couple of 4th down passes from Ewers to wide open players. But I think that's going to happen. The days of, beating somebody 17-7 and then punting 8 times, that's not realistic in the modern world. The key is keeping people out of the end zone. Texas had 500 and something yards. They moved the ball all day long. Some writer in Syracuse voted Texas ahead of OU after this game in the AP poll just because of the statistics of this game.
Oh,
but here's what I know. Texas got to the 1-yard line early in the 4th quarter. 1st and goal at the 1. Texas still hasn't scored on that drive. Sooners turned them back 3 times with Jonathan Brooks runs, he's a big-time tailback. And then on 4th down, they went with the quick slant to Xavier Worthy, who's a fantastic player. And Billy Bowman or Peyton Bowen or I think it's Bowman, turned him back at the goal line, didn't let him get in. Unbelievable defense. I don't really worry about yardage when I see that kind of defense. So fantastic goal line stand. So there's some things you can nitpick, but just the grit of that defense, forget the final score. The final score is fantastic, but even more important is the grit we saw out of that defense.
Yeah,
shows that things have changed in Norman.
Yeah, and that to me is huge. Oklahoma, they had chances, Barry. If they would have wanted, the momentum was definitely heading in Texas's direction in the 4th quarter. I really thought they had a chance to fall into their old ways, lose a 1-score game. We saw them do that a lot last year. I thought we were heading down that path again, and when Texas hit that field goal, it felt like, okay, this is a familiar script, but the defense did enough. The offense clearly did enough, and it was gritty both ways. So for them to win a 1-score game a year after they lost so many 1-score games, I think it speaks to the change that has come for this team. That's the sort of thing that, they had to get better X's and O's. They had to get better execution. They still need to get better in some ways in execution. Like you mentioned, open wide receivers. You don't want that to happen on a regular basis. They got to get that cleaned up. But to figure out a way to win in that situation, I thought that was big time by Oklahoma and on both sides of the ball to make it happen. Because, again, if you watch after that bad miss by Zach Schmidt on the woefully short field goal from that, maybe that's the concern, Barry. Maybe that's the thing that OU should be concerned about. But after that point, things were heading the Longhorns' way pretty drastically. So for Oklahoma to get it turned around, force them into a field goal, and then get their own touchdown, that was huge to get things turned there. All right, we got to get wrapped up. But before we go, OU heads into a bye week and then a home game against UCF here in a week. Barry, put yourself in Brent Venables' shoes. What are you having the Sooners do this week with their bye week as they look ahead to not only UCF, but 6 consecutive weeks of games as they head into the home stretch of the regular season here?
2 things. 1, relax. Take a breather. It's been a long, physical, but also mentally taxing stretch for the Sooners, not in terms of the opponents before Texas, but just sort of the pall that has been falling on this OU program in the last 18 months. They went 6-7 last year. People asking, what's wrong? Why do you guys stink? All those things. And then the questions before the Texas game and just people wanting to know what's going on with this program. Are you going to get back? Are you SEC ready? All those things. I think just a breather, just to take a step back, relax, practice 2 or 3 times, but just let the guys enjoy that victory because this has been a tough climb. On the football side of things, you referred to it. Kicking game. Get the kicking game fixed. A punt was blocked for a touchdown. You know, you look at Texas scored 30 points and you think, oh, it's a pretty good offensive day. Texas offense scored 2 touchdowns. If you allow the opponent 2 touchdowns, you ought to win easier than you won on Saturday. That blocked punt early in the game turned the tide, kept the Sooners from dominating the first quarter. Fix the special teams. There were some other miscues on the special teams. Get those hammered down. Find a kicker that you can count on to reach the goal line on the goalpost on a 45-yard field goal. If that's Zach Schmidt, if he just mishit it, whatever, you got to fix all that. But special teams, to me, right now, is the biggest problem.
Yeah, that was not a good situation to see him miss that 45-yarder. Again, not a situation of a ton of wind on Saturday. Just really did not get into that one at all. I thought that was really troubling. So yeah, Sooners got some work to do on special teams. But I think, yeah, just kind of, continuing to work on those basic things that they have been working on for weeks and months, looking at that film that receivers were getting open. I think that needs to be a point of emphasis. But, just letting guys, I think, bodies heal, rest mentally, physically, giving them a chance to get ready for a stretch run that now Oklahoma always has a target on their back just because of the name on the front. But now, being a team that's in this national championship race, Big 12 race, it's going to be even more so. So I think giving these guys a chance to really prepare for their final 6 weeks without a break, I think that's going to be really important for Oklahoma. Well, that's all the time we've got this week. If this is the first time that you have heard us here at the Jenni and Berry Show, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever else you get your podcast. And if you like what you hear, leave us a comment and we'll see that there on YouTube as well. We've got a lot more Sooner coverage coming up on Sellout Crowd, so you can find us at selloutcrowd.com or barrytramel.com or jenny-carlson.com. So you can find us there. Find us on all your channels for your favorite podcasts and shows as well. We'll be there with all of our other Sellout Crowd buddies. So thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week.